Okay, I want to welcome you all here to Work Week. This is a program about working people on KPOO in San Francisco. And also I produce a program, COVID, Race, and Democracy in Pacifica, which has been covering the South African dock workers strike. And we're happy to have all the comrades, brothers and sisters here from around the world. And one of the things I have to say is the use of this technology that we're on Zoom has been pretty historic, because there's been obviously a catastrophe with the pandemic. And I just learned from Brother Dube that 1.5 million people have died in South Africa as a result of COVID, which is catastrophic. So it's been a terrible thing for the working class of the world, particularly dock workers. But it also has brought us together with using this communication technology, which in the past was never possible for workers on two different continents to come together to discuss issues that they're facing them. So why don't we first just go around the people who are on. They can briefly introduce themselves, and then we'll begin the discussion. So
I'm really thrilled to see this historic meeting taking place. It's marvelous to see the faces. And I'm a trade unionist and a socialist who was organizing in South Africa from the 1970s. Had a short, happy career before I ended up house arrested and then in exile. But now, I'm working together with Joseph Dube, with RETUSA and the dock workers again. It's marvelous to see this fighting spirit throughout South African docks, and workers are in great shape to be able to link up internationally.
JV?
Sorry, comrades. My name is Joseph Vela Dube. I'm General Secretary of RETUSA, which is the Blue Transport Workers of South Africa. We are very happy to be part of the parcel of this conference and communicating with the rest of the world. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Hi, my name is Trent Willis. I'm the immediate past president of the International Longshore Warehouse Union, Local 10. I'm also a co-convener of the Million Worker March, the May Day Committee. Whatever we've done, I've been involved in it. I don't want to go down the whole list, but I want to send out a special greetings from the ILWU, in particular to my South African brothers and sisters. And I just want to let you know before we start that you have our full support. And I am very pleased to be a part of this panel today.
Clarence?
Solidarity greetings to everyone. Brother Clarence Thomas, third generation longshore worker, ILWU Local 10, retired, past Secretary and Treasurer, co-founder of the Million Worker March movement. And now I'm a publisher and author. Have a book out called Mobilizing in Our Own Name, which is one of the first books that actually chronicles the initiatives of the most radical segment of the International Longshore and Warehouse Union Longshore Division, ILWU Local 10. The local of Harry Bridges, the local of Leo Robinson and Cleophas Williams, Adji Willis. We have the distinguished honor of having the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. as being one of our honorary members. And just a little over a year ago, we made the iconic Black revolutionary scholar Angela Davis part of the Local 10 honorary membership. Very honored indeed to be a part of this event today. Thank you.
My name is Gennaro Baltrip. I'm ILWU Local 10 rank and file member.
I think everyone knows that there's been a historic strike in South Africa. The workers were fighting initially for a 12% increase, and all the docks were out. The cranes were up at every major port and even minor ports in South Africa. The workers stood united. There were every kind of workers, technical workers, stevedoring, other workers, all involved in the strike. And it's been a historic moment when the government has been holding the line to try and get away with a 3% increase, while inflation's been running at about 8.3 and even higher in South Africa. And one of the people who's been most involved in building workers' unity and spelling out a program to get higher wages and also against privatization is Joseph Dube in RETUSA, the Revolutionary Transport Union of South Africa. Now, people may not have heard about RETUSA, but I've heard about RETUSA from the workers that I helped organize in the early 2000s and later, some of the most marvelous workers in the stevedoring industry. And they said, this union is solid, it's strong, and it's going from strength to strength. And Joseph Dube, who we're about to hear, has been working on this, building up the union, particularly in Durban, which is the major port of South Africa, and something like half of the imports and exports of Southern Africa, that includes Zimbabwe and everywhere else, actually goes through the harbor of Durban. And so the workers there on the cranes, on the wharves, and the stevedores and so forth, these are absolutely critical to South Africa's future, and Joseph is organizing them. So we want to welcome you, comrade. We're feeling you're doing a terrific job. We're looking forward to further relations. I'd like to come back to that in the end, and we are dying to hear you speak.
Once again, thank you very much for the opportunity that has been given to us as RETUSA. We are organizing in transport, in warehouses, in stevedores, and in all transport-related actually sectors in South Africa. We are one of the most revolutionary and socialist trade union in South Africa, which is dealing with a lot of issues. Comrade, we've been involved in the past few weeks, in fact 3 weeks, with regard to the strike, as you've been just following in South Africa in regard to the strike that was taking place in Transnet. Transnet is a logistic company in South Africa, which is a parastatal, a state-owned company, which is responsible for transporting of coal, transporting of goods, import and export, and it's responsible for almost next to 60 to 70% of transportation of goods in South Africa. It's a very big company in South Africa, Transnet. We've started wage negotiations around July this year, and it was a very intense kind of wage negotiation. Around August, we then reached into a deadlock with the company Transnet. There were almost 3 unions that are involved, which is UNTO, United Transport Workers of South Africa, SA Transport Workers, which is SATAU, NUMSA, which is National Union Metal Workers of South Africa, and RETUSA, which is Revolutionary Transport Workers of South Africa. Transnet, I think around on the 25th of August, we reached a deadlock with Transnet. Transnet at first was offering 0%. You can imagine currently in South Africa, the inflation is around 7.8%. And Transnet was offering just 0%. On the first meeting after, this certificate which was issued on the 25th of August 2022, the company then issued the offer of 1.5%. We as trade union, we just call that as crazy, as insult, to the whole workers. Transnet is having employing around 55,000 workers in South Africa, 55,000. So it's a huge company. We then said to Transnet, there's no way that workers will accept, the 1.5%. Then the strike commenced probably around the 6th of October. Transnet was still offering 1.5%. On the few days when the strike, it was seen that it was having a huge impact. There was no movement, with the trains in South Africa moving from Emelo, which is in Mpumalanga region, transport calls, which is 200 trucks on each and every hour. you can then imagine the impact that is caused. That is in terms of exportation. In harbors, we've got actually almost 5 harbors, which is Durban Port, which is one of the biggest and busiest ports in South Africa. You have Cape Town, which also deals with container. We've got Dana, we've got the Richards Bay, with Eastland, but Port of Oakland.
In my introduction, I failed to mention that I'm also a part of an organization which is affectionately known as SLAP, stands for Schools and Labor Against Privatization. And the organization that I'm involved in was put together to help to fight against one major thing, and that's the attack on public resources from billionaires and corporations, which is all, in my personal opinion, a part of a larger scheme, which is the control of resources all over the world. The fight to control resources all over the world is affecting the most valuable, what corporations and billionaires consider the most valuable commodity, which is the working man and woman. Okay. Anything of value is in some form exploited. Okay, we can, for example, we can use the oil in the Middle East as an example of what I'm talking about. It's a very valuable commodity. So there's all types of exploitation going on there to control that commodity and to control the people there. Well, working people are the most valuable commodity. The cheaper the labor is, the more profits and control the exploiters have. The fight against that has been a continuous fight since the beginning of time. I'm just proud to be a part of an organization that has committed itself to, be a vanguard in that struggle, which is the ILWU. The ILWU has been a beacon of light for working people since the 1930s, and in particular for the most exploited people when it comes to labor, the Black and brown people, all over the world, who at one point labor was exploited and taken for free. So with all of that said, the struggle continues. The ILWU, along with our South African brothers and sisters, are involved in a struggle right now, even though we're not on strike as of right now, but we are in a battle to maintain what we have fought for the past 88 years, and to also be compensated and treated in a respectful way by our employers. That struggle continues, and it's just my generation's turn to make sure that we are successful in those struggles. As you may have, I'm losing my voice here, as you may have seen through social media and news outlets, the ocean carriers, shippers, and terminal operators have made record profits since the pandemic and during the pandemic. Billions and billions of dollars in profits. The inflation is at an all-time high. And gas prices are out of this world. Everything is more expensive. It's more dangerous to interact in society. It's gotten to the point where the rich have become just astronomically richer and the poor have become astronomically poorer. Okay, all of the evidence is in the streets. You can drive down the street in your local neighborhood, and I guarantee you will get to a spot where there are homeless people living on the street and living in cars, okay, living under freeways, okay, living in dark spaces, not having access to any type of social assistance, any type of public resources that could help them out of the situation that they're in. This is all a result of worldwide greed. This is a result of privatization. It's a result of bad management when it comes to the people who we have voted into office. Okay. It comes from a lack of education and people understanding the role that working people play in society all over the world, and why it's important for working people to connect all over the world, because all of our goals are the same. No matter what nationality, no matter what gender, what race, what religion, working people all have something in common. Before our brother from South Africa was unfortunately cut off, he was literally mirroring everything that we're going through with the same employers. Okay, they might be under a different name or a different umbrella in South Africa, but they're the same employers, the same shippers. They've been in business for many, many years, hundreds of years. Matter of fact, my people, African Americans, were once the cargo of these same shippers. Okay, it was kind of ironic, but I was watching an old movie, Huckleberry Finn, and there was a scene in Huckleberry Finn where they were unloading a slave ship, and on the side of the slave ship it said P&O shipping, and I literally had worked a P&O ship like 3 days before I saw that, or I noticed that in that movie, which was very eye-opening to me, that I am now working ships that used to, well, not the same ships, but the same companies that used to ship slaves. So this is who we're dealing with. This is who the South African longshore and transport workers are dealing with. These companies, these billionaires, they have the same mentality as the slave owners had back in the 1800s. They are the same people who have been blocking Reconstruction since the 1870s. They are the same people who, every time society moves in a progressive way towards uniting the races, towards uniting working people, these are the people who are standing in the way. And they're using a lot of different tactics to pretty much divide workers. And when you can divide workers, you can control workers. When you can control workers, you can control resources. And when you control resources, you have worldwide dominance. And all of these billionaires are striving for worldwide dominance to control resources in a world that is becoming more populated every day. So we have to realize the situation we're in and form our fight back around that. Okay, so with that said, I've been very proud to be involved with organizations like SLAP. I've been proud to be involved with organizations like the Million Worker March organization. Been involved in the planning and bringing back the celebration of May Day in the Bay Area. And all of these things are important because they help us to first spread the message about uniting and bringing workers together. This is why it's important to plan events like the Million Worker March and the May Day celebrations. It's also important, and before I stop talking, I have to say this. One of the main hurdles, and I think my brother Clarence Thomas will back me up on this. One of the main obstacles in the struggle to unite working people against all of these forces that are trying to devalue our labor is the movement that's supposed to be supporting us. When we were planning the Million Worker March, we ran into so much bureaucracy and red tape. When it comes to our own labor movement, and the organizing of the Million Worker March was something very special because it showed me that we had to organize in our own name. This is why forums like this is so important, because we're bypassing the labor movement bureaucracy. And we're starting a discussion to organize in our own name. And until people do that on a mass scale, similar to, I always use the example of the Black Panthers. Until we can do that on a mass scale, working people will continue to struggle and continue to have these fights. Because it's basically the poor fighting the rich, if you want to simplify it. And they have the money and we have the power. But if that power is divided, it's not strong as it can be to fight against, the organized monetary power that billionaires and corporations have. So with that said, I'm very proud to be a part of this discussion. Our contract negotiations have pretty much stalled for right now due to an NLRB issue that has to be settled before we can move forward. Other than that, I don't have much to report. The employers are literally not willing to admit that they have made astronomical profits and that they need to share some of those profits with the workers whose backs they made those profits off of. And also during the pandemic, when it was very dangerous to work on the waterfront, a job that is already the fourth most dangerous job in the world. Then you add the pandemic to it, and it became even that much more dangerous. The Longshore workers worked through that pandemic. If the supply chain issues have showed us when there's disruptions in the supply chain, what happens? Those were just disruptions. You can imagine what would happen if it was just an all-out, flat-out, just no cargo moving through the ports at all. It would be disastrous for the community. So with all that being said, and all of the sacrifices that the Longshore workers here on the West Coast, and not only on the West Coast, but the East Coast and the Gulf area have made during the past 2 years dealing with the pandemic, the gratification and respect is not there from the employers. And they're refusing to acknowledge that. And the struggle continues. And we look forward to uniting our struggles with the dock workers from South Africa and dock workers all over the world. With that being said, and workers all over the world. So I'm proud to be a part of this. Thank you for inviting me, Steve. And once again, greetings from the ILWU to all of the guests.
Thank you, Trent.
But we also have another Southern African worker here, Leonard Mpembu, And maybe he could come in. I think you're from Walvis Bay, which is another major port of Southern Africa. Is that right, Leon?
Well, thanks again, Stephen. By the way, November 6th, we'll commemorate the anniversary for the strike at San Francisco State College, which was the longest, more than 4.5 months. And it's interesting that it would have taken place in San Francisco, the same city that the maritime strike was led by Harry Bridges and others in 1934. I think it's important to make some historical connections here. A few years ago, Professor Peter Cole wrote a book called Dock Worker Power, Race and Activism, and discussing the anti-apartheid struggle waged by dock workers in Durban and ILWU and Local 10 in San Francisco. And so I think that this forum today just continues that history. I'd like to go to talk about something very quickly in terms of the question of privatization. It appears to me, as it relates to ports, it appears to me that what's happening in South Africa, what's happening in India and in Brazil, is that we're looking at the privatization of ports. And the reason for that is because the bosses want more productivity and they want more profits. They're willing to utilize the International Monetary Fund to exercise its leverage to be able to put private investment into ports that leads to such things as automation, which is one of the issues that the ILWU is dealing with right now. We've seen the impact of privatization in Australia, where there has been an increase in layoffs, greater casualization of labor. We've seen the intimidation and I guess you could say actions against labor leaders coming on the ports and doing their jobs. This is what we've seen specifically on an international basis. Whereas here in the Bay Area, where a man by the name of John Fisher, who owns many corporations, some of whom you might be familiar with, he's a major landowner. He owns the Oakland A's baseball team. He owns a great deal of things, and he wants to build a baseball park, and he wants to build 3,000 luxury condominiums. He wants to build an amphitheater, almost 2 million square feet of commercial real estate space at the third busiest port on the West Coast. And this would undermine the economy of the entire Northern California region. And yet you have labor divided on that issue, and specifically because something that Trent made reference to earlier, it's something called business unionism, where you see the collaboration between labor and corporate and Democratic Party interests working together. This particular development is not in the issue of the working class at all, and will require nearly $1 billion on the part of the Oakland citizenry to support this. I believe right now what needs to happen is that there needs to be greater solidarity and coordination in terms of what's happening in South Africa and what's happening at the Port of Oakland. We need to begin to move towards solidarity action on these issues. And that can happen on a very fundamental basis. For an example, last April 29th, a few days before May Day, which fell on a Sunday, dock workers and members of the Oakland Education Association, Oakland teachers, shut down for a whole day. Teachers were shutting down because of school closures and also because the Oakland Unified School District is looking to sell school property to developers so that they can convert those schools into upscale condominiums or charter schools. John Fisher, who I mentioned earlier, who wants to build the ballpark, is a major, major player in charter schools and funder. But on the 29th of April, Longshore workers and teachers shut down for the day. And not only that, but Longshore workers did not work on the night shift as well. It is this kind of solidarity action that needs to be underscored and needs to be replicated. This is exactly what we need at this time. And in closing, let me just say this. You know, it is quite ironic that May Day is celebrated all around the world as a day of worker solidarity and resistance. And that started right here in the United States of America, May 1st, 1886. One of the reasons why we don't have a Labor Party, one of the reasons why we don't have greater working class solidarity and consciousness is because that history has been hidden from the American worker. And it is one of the reasons why we reclaim May Day after the Million Worker March, October 17, 2004. This is a very important symposium or meeting that we're having here today. We need to have more of them. This is very important. And I don't, you know, like, I'm of the mindset that there might be some disruption as to the reason why these South African brothers can't speak right now. They're saying that it's power grid, but the powers that be are always at work trying to undermine whatever we're trying to do in terms of coming together. So we cannot dismiss that as a fact. But I think that's all I want to say right now. But this is a very important issue, and I hope that we'll be able to build on this. Thank you.
Comrades, let me just sincerely apologize in terms of some technicality that I'm just involved. You know, there's a problem of network, more especially our using telecom. So from time to time, it's just going up and down. But I'm just back again. Comrades, I was speaking on to the issue of the commencement of the strike, which was on the 7th of October. So when we commenced, I think we have just done very well. On the 10th, I think all the unions were involved. Initially it was UNTU that first went on strike in terms of their notice. Then the second union that follows in terms of joining the strike was COSATU and RETUSA on the 10th. And I think on the 11th or the 12th, then NUMSA joined us. Comrades, I should say it was a very great strike. You know, the last time we're having such a great unity in South Africa, more especially in Transnet, it was on 2010 when we have such a great strike. This strike was so huge. In fact, it then forced the government to intervene. There was the involvement at CCMA of the Minister of Finance, Minister of Employment and Services, and the Minister of Traditional Services. They were all involved in CCMA trying actually to conciliate together with the CCMA commissioner. In fact, there were two commissioners from CCMA. It was at that time then that Transnet then moved from the offer of 1.5% to the 3%. The unions, three of them rejected that offer of 3%. The strike actually proceeded up until I think it was the end of that week from the 10th. Then there was then the intervention of the commissioner together with some other ministers of government. In fact, almost half of the ministers of the cabinet of South Africa was involved in terms of trying to find a solution. the cargo owners were complaining left, right, and center because their cargo were just at the sea. Some of the cargo was at the harbors, in all the harbors that I've just mentioned. There was no movement whatsoever. I'm fortunate, comrade, that my office in town, in Durban, city center, is situated and is overlooking the harbor of Durban. I was able to see, the cranes that were up, meaning they were not operational. I was able to see, point area. I was able to see Pier 1. I was able to see Pier 2. I was able to see Meridor. I recall at some stage, I spoke actually to Dave to say, what I can see is amazing. It's amazing because we can see it's not something that we are just informed. I can see where I'm standing in the office. That everything was on standstill. The harbor operations bay also, which is dealing with the breakback, like stainless steel and all other big, kind of cargo. Everything was just standstill in Cape Town. We're communicating with comrades. I was fortunate then that I was invited to come and join workers at the picket line at next to Transnet Engineering. Which the road that is going towards Bluff. There were almost around 2,000 workers that are addressed there. And the unity it was called in. And everybody was very happy when I just came and just addressed workers. We're just calling for the unity that we should proceed with this kind of unity between this union. We must join hands. We must never let the employer come in between us and so forth. I was very happy on them. And the workers were very happy, to see, because the previous day there was a spokesperson from SAFTA who also came in to address workers. I think after myself, there was a spokesperson from UNTO and a spokesperson from NUMSA that came. The unity comrade was so much high. Ultimately, comrade, maybe to cut along the long story short, towards the second week, there was negotiations that was called by the employer Transnet, together with CCMA. After CCMA presented, the new offer which was put on the table to all the parties, meaning Transnet and the unions. That 6% then was revised to 6% on the first year, 5.3 on the second year, and 5.5 on the third year. What was very strange, comrade, is that there was a clause, I think on the agreement, it should be number 5. That clause was saying Transnet will not guarantee that in the next coming years there will be no restructuring, meaning there will be no retrenchment. The next day, which was probably on the 18th, if not the 14th, UNTO were all surprised, that UNTO signed off and have a deal with Transnet in regard to 6% the first year, 5.3 the second year, and 5.5 on the third year. And that UNTO as a trade union was the majority union, having almost around 60% of membership of Transnet. And the rest of the union are just feeling that remaining percent. UNTO signed off that deal, Congress. We were then all forced, to say to the employer, if UNTO have just signed off and so forth, can we then have a separate agreement? Transnet said, on the basis that UNTO is the majority, so the agreement that was signed by UNTO bind almost all the union, including SAFTA, including NUMSA and ourselves as a RETUSA. We were then forced, to bow down and to go to our members and say to our members, what is the next step? So it was very clear that all our members were supposed and were forced actually to go back actually to work on the basis of that agreement that was signed by UNTO. It was a very sad day. SAFTA issued a statement, we issued a statement, and NUMSA issued a statement to say we were all disappointed, comrades. We were just all disappointed. Mind you, at the time when negotiation in regard to the issue of wages commenced, were busy tied up with Transnet on the issue of privatization. So it means right now, on the basis of this agreement of Ondo, it has given a green light to Transnet to say, you can go on with the retrenchment, you can go on with privatization, meaning there was, with all the union, there was a dispute, in fact, on the issue of privatization. But this agreement has just given, more power to Transnet. We are not going to bow down from respect. What we can say, our members have just given us a mandate to say, much as we might be difficult on the issue of wages, yes, the 6% is just a little bit, given the circumstances that we are at 7.8% on inflation. But what is very huge and a setback into this whole thing, it's an issue of the retrenchment and the privatization that Transnet and the government, in fact, has given go ahead in all state-owned companies that, they should go. There is an issue of SAA. We've seen in South Africa what has happened to SAA. It was a wholesome privatization. Workers, almost all of them were just retrenched, and they were re-employed with almost half of what they used to earn when they were just taken back by the new consortium, which was just bought almost all the shares from SAA. So we know, comrades, we are coming from the history of privatization in terms of what he has done. In terms of the new proposal, of Transnet onto the issue of privatization, they are targeting the PR2, which is at Port of Durban, a very business kind of department, and the Port of Oakland, which is almost 10 years, where Transnet spent around almost 5 billion building that to support Port of Oakland. Now all those are just on the line. There's been some consultation with Transnet, and they're saying the new employer, which is going to have a 25-year agreement, is not going to. So the company, I'm having a little bit of flu and sinuses, so from time to time, as you can maybe hear me, I'm speaking from my nose. Sorry for that, but I think I'll be better in the next coming days. Comrades, these are the challenges that we are facing, where we've issued a statement, we've just promised Transnet to take them onto the issue of privatization, because in South Africa, we know the effects of privatization, workers that lost jobs. Currently, comrades, we are standing at around 42%, if you are not using a consecutive calculation of the consumer price index. In South Africa, in terms of the youth, they are around 76% of unemployment. You know what has happened in July last year in terms of the uprising. The situation as was taken at a very critical stage was people are just doing whatever they can to try and just survive. It's a kind of a very bad situation. On the issue of inequality, South Africa is one of the countries that is leading in terms of inequality in the world. Poverty is a very serious kind of issue. In fact, if it was not for the intervention of government on the issue of grants, the grant and duty that is given to all unemployed, the children grant that is given actually to the children up to the age of 18, the old age grant which is given from as you know, the age of 60. People in South Africa will be dying with hunger. Seriously, this is the challenges. One of the things in terms of the stats, you'll find that in South Africa, one person is supporting a family or people around 10. So if this privatization go ahead, it means therefore we'll be adding into the high rate of unemployment. It means we'll be adding to the high rate of poverty. It means we'll be adding to the inequality that is, proceeding as if, we don't have democracy. But as unions, we've taken, more especially with these two other unions, and NOMSA, we seem to be talking one and the same kind of language. Right now, we are engaged on challenging Transnet to say we should be developing some sort of campaigns, some picket lines. We know we've went a lot of trouble through this picketing, through this campaign that we've been just waiting over years. And we hope, because before 2010, there was a plan from Transnet to privatize Moha. At SAFTA, at a time when we challenged that. We have serious measures. We have petitioned the government in terms of stopping that. We've managed, comrades, I think it was around 2009, to stop, privatization of the Port of Oakland. And we know, once again, that we are going to challenge this kind of action by the government and also by Transnet. And we know, if we are still united together with these unions, we are going to conquer that. This is some sort of a short story comment that one would like actually to present. I want to, as conclusion, comment to thank you all in terms of the support, statements that we issued, messages of support that we have just received, coming from many unions in the world. We have managed to conquer the apartheid in South Africa through, the support of the international community, the support of, the comrades, the socialists, the trade unions, the international community as a whole. We've managed in South Africa to conquer the apartheid. So we are very confident that even now, comrades, with your support that we are receiving, with these whole issues of yourself coming to say we are giving solidarity to the people of South Africa, more especially workers. We are confident, comrades, that we are going to conquer all these challenges that we are just facing. I think it's important, comrades, that this solidarity that we waged, throughout the world, more especially the trade unions, which are very, very powerful. I want to once again, to thank you, the ILWU comrades who have been always with us in South Africa, and comrades throughout the world that have been always with us in South Africa in terms of supporting the struggle of the working class. If we are united, comrades, there's nothing that will break us apart. So let us proceed with this unity. Let us proceed with this solidarity. Let us proceed, comrades, with this picket line. And we know we are going to conquer these capitalists, because divided we fall, but united we stand. Thank you.
Thank you, Comrade JV, for your contribution. And we certainly agree. We need solidarity. We need united action, and an injury to one is an injury to all, which is the slogan of the ILWU, as a matter of fact. And that's why it's been involved internationally. I wanted to also mention that January the 26th and 27th, Comrade JV and other unions are calling a conference on privatization, on the attack on the working class in Durban, South Africa. And if people want to get more information on it, they can put their email in the chat, and we'll send you the call. But it's the purpose of it is to bring together workers, not just in South Africa, but internationally, around this fight against privatization, because it's not just a national question, it's an international question. And I think we have to unite workers globally against privatization. And as Trent has said, the SLAP, Schools and Labor Against Privatization, is, as far as I know, the only vehicle in the United States to unite unions, people from the community, workers together against privatization and take action. And I think that has to be replicated, as Trent said, in Los Angeles and many other communities. I know that in Seattle, they tried to privatize the docks as well. So these capitalists, the billionaires, see the docks not as an important resource for working people, but as a place for development of property. And the property development takes priority over workers' jobs and transportation of goods, which is one of the issues.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting to. I'm just tuning in. I have worked in Seattle on the Committee to Stop Police Terror and Systemic Racism, which was started in Oakland with Trent and those folks over there. So I just heard from my comrades that I work on that committee with about this, and I'm very interested in international solidarity, and we are experiencing the same issues in different parts of the world, and I think that it's very important that we get together and do these types of things. So thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to mention something that I didn't mention earlier, and Clarence did a very good job explaining the situation here in the Bay Area to everyone in regards to the Oakland A's and the proposed stadium at Howard Terminal. But the one key thing we didn't mention was that the billionaire that we are struggling against here in the Bay Area, John Fisher, owner of the Oakland A's, is also involved with KIP, which is the outfit that privatizing the schools. Okay, so the connection between the ILWU and the OEA was made because we realized that we were dealing with the same conglomerate there, who is literally going after the main public resources in the city of Oakland, the schools and the port. So I wanted to make sure that the panel understood exactly what we were dealing with here, and what we're dealing with in the Bay Area is no different from what people in Baltimore are dealing with. You know, people in pretty much all of the major cities, especially the port cities. There is definitely a run on public resources by billionaires and corporations that we need to really organize worldwide against and stand up against. Thank you. I just wanted to mention that.
I was just tuning in and chiming in, trying to see what's going on really. And well, I'm also a part of that group with Trent with the slap and dealing with the schools and things like that, and dealing with the port and going to Zoom meetings with city councils and stuff like that, and just the way they try to justify some of these economic decisions they're making and stuff just doesn't make sense. It's like, how are you closing down all the public school resources? I mean, that doesn't make sense at all for us people like myself, I should say. I come up in the public school system. I'm not certain about everybody in this meeting, but I came up in the public school system. And where I came up in the public school system, there is no more public school system. In New Orleans, there's no more public school systems. It's all charter schools already. So this is going on everywhere, like you say, in Baltimore and other places. This attack is real. This privatization, they are really serious about taking over Oakland, and they're really serious about putting that stadium on Howard Terminal, where it's an active port right now presently. But I plan on also wanting to see about what's going on with the rail workers today at 3:00, because that's informative information too. And I'm just trying to inform myself as much as possible about what's going on in the world, because like, man, it just doesn't make a lot of sense that we all human beings when it comes down to it, and another human being to oppress the other human being just so that they could gain a little capital and they feel like their family's sitting off a little bit better doesn't make a lot of sense. We all need to share the pot. We need to share the pot and divide the pot so that everybody can have something and have some way of sustaining themselves and their families. And I'm just gonna. That's why I didn't want to really say too much, because I feel like I should have something more prepared instead of just coming off of my emotions and how I'm feeling about what's going on in society.
One of the things I think that we want to do in this panel and internationally is build a united front. And the Million Worker March was a united front of workers, of community groups throughout the country coming together. And the people most afraid of it wasn't the capitalists, it was the union leadership, the AFL-CIO, who said, how dare you have a rally of workers in Washington before the election? This was in October. I mean, how dare you unify the working class in a public demonstration in Washington, D.C. with basic demands for housing, for national health care. I mean, so they're terrified of a unified action. And I think in the case of the railroad workers rally today at 3, that's what we want to do, to bring UPS workers, to bring Teamsters, longshoremen, education workers together, because I think it's clear only a unified action of the working class can be successful in fighting the capitalists. I mean, that's the only way you're going to be able to fight them. And I see with Amazon, they're spending hundreds of millions of dollars trying to bust the union, prevent workers from having unions. And I've talked to some of the UPS workers, because they probably will be going on strike next year. When they go on strike next year, the UPS workers, they should also bring out the Amazon and FedEx workers together with them. Imagine that, the power of UPS, Amazon, and FedEx workers all going on strike together. That's how you unionize. That's how you beat the employers, that kind of united action. So I think what we need to do is develop a united front approach to bring the working class together and use the power of all workers collectively. And that will be a successful tactic. It was used during the 1930s when the CIO was built. Workers came together. That's how they were successful. Clarence, you want to add to that?
I would just like to say, Steve, that you're right on point as far as connecting those struggles. That's been a major problem in the labor movement. Rank and filers need to make this happen. You can't rely on the union leadership to do so, because the union leadership are the junior partners of the Democratic Party. Let's just call it out for what it is. And so the reason why you would see so-called labor supporters or elected officials in Oakland specifically that are supporting John Fisher is because John Fisher is providing financial support to Democrats as well. And so that's the mother's milk of politics. Get back to it again. We need a labor party in this country. And so people need to understand that as workers, it's not just about working conditions and benefits and so forth and so on. It has to do with the class. It has to do with the working class. Us having power to influence foreign policy, to influence the domestic agenda. We want national health care in this country, and we can't get it because the elected officials who are in the pockets of the health care services say you can't have it. So the minimum wage in the United States of America ought to be between $25 and $30 an hour, because that's the kind of productivity that the workers are generating in this country. All of the billions of dollars that are going to Ukraine, when we don't even have fresh water for our sisters and brothers who live in Mississippi, in Jackson, Mississippi, in Flint, Michigan, and it's time. And so there is the political class in this country is subservient to the ruling class in totality. And so we are at the point right now where the rank and file is going to have to begin to take these actions from the bottom up. It does not happen from the top down. It happens from the bottom up. And I think that the point that you're making, Steve, is so critical. The idea of teachers and longshore workers coming together is a revolutionary concept in labor today. Schoolroom, classroom, dock workers, because we can see the intersectionality of that struggle based on John Fisher and the clothing school. I just want to conclude with this, with this one point. And that is this. My father came to the Bay Area in 1936. He attended a school in Oakland called Clawson. For more than 20 years, Clawson has been the home of upscale condominiums in West Oakland. So the school that he attended is now upscale condominiums. Gentrification. They basically want to remove Black folks and the working class away from these communities. Remove them totally. They want to take back the cities. And they also want to eliminate the industrial sector. Women who belong to the ILWU, be they Black women, white women, Latino women, Asian women, transgender women, they make the same as white and Black men. There are very few industries in the country that provide those kinds of opportunities. And yet, you got elected officials who are willing to undermine one of the most important public resources in Northern California. For over 150 years, the maritime industry has been thriving in Oakland, California. And to show you the crisis of capitalism, John Fisher is now challenging shipping owners, terminal operators, and stevedoring companies and saying, I want to set up shop where you operate. It's absolutely insane. So much so that we've had to develop an organization called the East Oakland Stadium Alliance. Listen very carefully. That is made up of not only maritime unions, community people, but also employers to stop Fisher from doing this at the third busiest port on the West Coast. This is an indication of the crisis of capitalism in the United States of America.
Well, basically,
everybody, I think it's clear when workers go out on strike, as what's happening in South Africa, and what happened with the ILWU, that workers really have power. And the important thing is to make that power generalized internationally. So one thing that I would like to push is to talk about how we can connect up the South African workers, the Namibian workers, the American workers, to really shut down the ports and shut down major industries so that people can win their demands. And ultimately, you know, the only salvation for the working class is socialism, and when workers take power. But I have a question for Aaliyah, because I think Aaliyah is in the RWU. And I'm just wondering, this is an industry in the United States that is unlike any other. I mean, the train drivers go across the country. They have the power to shut down industry in a way that in some ways nobody else does. And the fact is that I think that the people who are in the leadership of the RWU, who are the most foresighted, should really consider, mobilizing and not, I'm glad that there's a demonstration, but really shutting down and calling a strike and shutting down everything, because everybody will then see that the power is really in the hands of the working class. At this point, people are divided and they're not working. Some workers are out on strike, some are not out on strike. There's, in the unity of the working class, that's where we can really show that we can take the power from those greedy capitalists who we've spent a lot of time on the call describing. Now it's time for workers to start to think about what we want to do to change that, that whole geometry of things. I'm wondering whether I can see that Sagasa is on the line. I'm not sure whether his his technology is working. And I know Leonhardt was on the line at one point, who was from Namibia. Can they possibly call in to say what's going on in WhatsApp, and so that we can really get a broader picture of what's going on in those countries, and then come up with a strategy about what are we going to do in order to really generalize the strike and show our solidarity, not only because we are, we solidarize with South African workers, but because clearly the situation is the same everywhere. And the only way to change that ultimately is to have the international unity.
I agree with the last speaker, Sister Carol, about developing a plan, because you have members from the ILWU here right now. The connections that we can make, and I'm not just talking about paper connections. Of course, we can submit resolutions at our executive board and union meetings and vote to support the dock workers in South Africa. That's good for show. Okay, but real support is real support, and everyone knows what I'm talking about. The ILWU has some of the same similar problems as any other union. We have our internal bureaucracy just like anybody else. Our constitution and bylaws just allow us to be more liberal and to organize in our own name within our union, which at times we are able to outvote our leadership. That is a unique and very valuable tool for our members to have, is the bottom up rule. A lot of unions don't have that. So as we're moving forward in organizing, if we're meeting here today to move forward with some type of plan, then I would think we should be talking about that and seeing exactly what our individual organizations can do to not only support the South African dock workers, but to support the ILWU, support any other workforce that's struggling around the world. And we can use some of these current events happening now to attract focus to the issues that we're talking about. So I don't have really any suggestions as I'm talking. I'm just kind of trying to, I guess, direct the conversation somewhere. So with that said, I have open ears as far as what can be done or what the ILWU can do to help our brothers and sisters in South Africa.
Well, I think that the South African dock workers are quite happy to have heard from the ILWU. And there's a resolution that's going to be coming to the San Francisco Labor Council on Monday to support them as well. So, I mean, we have to at least get the information out. If people know the information about that national dock strike has not been published in corporate media. There's no mention of it. But I mean, we're also having a strike wave now in France and England, United Kingdom is working, moving towards a general strike. So these massive struggles of workers are not being reflected in the media. They don't want workers to know even what's going on next door to them as far as struggles. They want to keep everybody isolated in a corner so you can't unite and see that your struggle is common with struggles of workers around the world. Sagasa, were you going to make some comments?
Yes, I wish to make some comment. I am from South Africa, Durban. Firstly, I want to apologize for my network. I've been trying to get in, but I've been having some trouble. That's why you're seeing me coming in, coming out. But I wanted to comment, especially in the issue of the dock workers being privatized. I think currently in South Africa we are faced with the serious situation where this is not the first time. I think in 5 years ago they tried the same thing to privatize the port. Luckily, at that time, there were managers who were more on the worker side, who were able to alert us that this is the plan going forward, of which we did try to stop it at that time. Unfortunately, now things have changed, and the administration has changed in the form of government. So everything has changed in a form of government. We feel that the government of South Africa is anti-workers, in particular at the port. I think they are not seeing the port as one of the assets that generates the employment as well as the income of the country. They see it more like a place where they can easily make a business, because as we speak, we were given a presentation. I think Comrade JV is here, the General Secretary of RETUSA. I also belong in the same organization. I think about 2 weeks ago, we were given a presentation on how far have they gone with privatizing the Port of Durban, actually the national port. And in their information, they are telling us that they have gone very far, and it's not even easy for us to stop it at this point. Now, I think that's why we wish to come in this forum and request that we seek solidarity from our fellow colleagues from across the board, to also put a pressure into saying privatizing the port will not be the good thing for the country. Secondly, for the workers, which we know that privatization always come with the job cuts, and exactly South Africa is sitting at a very high volume of unemployment. So if they had to privatize the port now, even the ones that are currently working, they are going to lose. We are going to lose the job. So I think at this stage, we will really need any assistance that one can get, advices that one can get, so that we can be able to facilitate and try to stop this privatization that is happening in the port. So that's what I wanted to say in contributing, especially in the issue of privatization. Thank you.
Thank you, comrade.
I've got a question. I've followed the strike in full solidarity with the comrades in South Africa who are on strike. And I noticed in the press in the UK that some of the demands of these strikers were for 10% or 12% increase in the wages, backdated to April of this year. And as I've read it in the press, the comrades have won about 6%, and I'm interested to know. I'm interested to know what the mood of the workers is. Do they feel this is a victory? Is it a partial victory? Is it Is it a partial? Where's the movement going, and has it encouraged the workers to feel stronger in their union? While I'm talking to the comrades here, this is a terrific meeting, a really great meeting. I just want to let you know that dock workers in the UK have been on strike recently in the port of Felixstowe, which is on the east coast. It's the biggest container port in the UK, and it's where a huge amount of the supplies for the British economy come in. And also workers in the Port of Liverpool have been on strike. In fact, I just saw in the press today that the workers in the Port of Liverpool are considering coming out on strike again on Monday of next week. This goes hand in hand with a big wave of strikes amongst a lot of different sections of workers in the UK. Railway workers have been on strike for several weeks. This is a rolling program of strikes. They're not on strike every day. It helps them, of course, with it helps the workers who are taking strike action to create disruption without depriving themselves long-term of a huge amount of income. They go on strike for a day or two, and then they're back, and then they go on strike again. Postal workers have been on strike on a similar principle, a couple of days here, a couple of days there. It's very disruptive without depriving the workers of too much of their salary. The following groups of workers are involved in discussions about whether they should come out on strike soon: teachers, nurses, government workers, and midwives. And it's really noticeable that I've probably left some groups of workers out, but it's really noticeable that the mood of the working class in the UK has changed in the last few months, and it's combative, and it is really making progress towards the idea of a one-day general strike, which of course would hugely boost the self-confidence of the working class and show the capacity of the working class, as other comrades have said in this call, that the capacity of the working class to take power, to own and control the economy, and to run society properly, democratically, in the hands of the people and not for profiteers. Thank you, comrades.
I want to respond on the issue of strike, the recent strike of Transnet, as well as the demand and the feeling of the workers. One, we need to say that the feeling of the workers across the board, they were disappointed that we did not get, we call it the 2-digit, anything above 10%. One of the reasons that maybe caused that was that in terms of negotiating, there were more than one trade union that was negotiating. The majority union, which represent the more of the middle class or the people at senior position, they felt that 6% will be enough for their members. Meanwhile, us who represent mostly the general workers, the port workers, and the people at lower grade, we understood that the 6% of, say, 20,000 and the 6% of 2,000 will never be the same. So we felt that we were betrayed by the other union by accepting the 6% that the company offered. Because there was one clause which was seriously putting a danger in the well-being of the employees, because on the same agreement they have attached a retrenchment clause, which, if you look at the clause which they have put there, that the retrenchment, to say that the company can at any stage start the process of retrenching if it feels that it cannot maintain its staff in terms of the labor cost and other costs, it can easily start the process of retrenching. So we wanted that clause to be taken out from the agreement, because we felt that if you combine the two, the issue of privatization and the issue of that clause, it actually work better for the company, because if you sign an agreement which allows the company to retrench as and when they feel that the company is not doing good in terms of financials, because we signed a 3-year agreement, so it's putting the danger in the security of the workers. So that's why I'm saying the feeling of the 6%. But it's not good generally on the workers. They do not like it. As one of the reasons that I was late from joining this meeting, I was also having another Zoom meeting with the Cape Town workers who were belonging to those unions which was negotiating. Actually, they wanted to move from that union to join now our trade union, because they believe that we can maybe do better and try to find solution in all of these things, especially the issue of retrenchment. So that's what I wanted to sponsor on the question that was put by the fellow comrade who was here, to say what is the feeling on the workers. The feeling is it's very bad. We are not happy with what Transnet has signed, which they term it. It's a 3-year agreement, which means it will be finished around 22, 23, 24, around that. So it's not a good agreement that was signed. Thank you. As I'm saying, there is more than one trade union that is operating in Transnet. which NUMSA as a trade union belong to Federation SAFTA, and SATAU as a trade union belong to Federation COSATU, of which COSATU and NUMSA, they were part of the strike. They did came on the picketing places that were given by the company. They gave us the message of support to say that they are with the workers. They will want to fight this until the end. But we all know that once the company have signed the 3-year agreement, it's no longer on the hands of the federations, in particular around the issue of the 3-year agreement. So it's need the bigger audience in terms of trying to change the belief and the practices that Transnet has embarked on. But in summary, I will say COSATU as well as SAFTA, they did came into party. They did give their message of support to the dock workers. I was with COSATU leadership in the picketing site of Transnet, and I was with some NUMSA comrades which came and joined the strike. So as RETUSA leadership, they were all there to share their message of support.
What about COSATU, which is the umbrella union, right? Are they willing to pull out other members in other unions and to support you and the Longshore workers?
That was the plan, actually. That's why I'm saying we were disappointed when we heard that the majority union have signed on the agreement with Transnet, because when COSATU came, the plan was that they are going to apply for the secondary strike to try and bring more unions to join the strike in order to strengthen the strike, in order to try to push Transnet into going into what the workers have demanded. So that was the plan in the form of COSATU. They did say that if the strike had to continue, they will have to do the application of a secondary strike in order to assist the dock workers.
Well, I want to thank you all, brothers and sisters, for joining us in this important exchange, building solidarity, building internationalism, and the struggle is only continuing. It's not going away, and it's deepening.